Hey everybody, it's Shelly Kramer. Happy Friday. Happy Friday before a holiday weekend. I don't know who's not excited about that. Today, I'm so excited. I have a guest on the show that is a longtime friend. As a matter of fact, I've known Jeff since I first started my career in advertising. And he's awesome and he's smart, and it really pains me to say that. And I'm going to read a little bit of his bio because it's changed. He's got a new adventure that he's embarking on. Jeff's an executive vice president at Barkley, which is where I started my career in advertising. And he is now leading a brand new millennial trends consulting unit called Future Cast. Jeff's a graduate of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He writes for Forbes, Ad Age, American City Business Journals, and he's a founder of Share Like Buy, which is a millennial trends and emerging tech conference. Jeff's also the co-author of a book called Marketing To Millennials, Reach the Largest and Most Influential Generation of Consumers Ever. Oh my God, I hate reading bios. But anyway, my point is, when it comes to millennials and marketing to millennials, Jeff has a lot of information and he speaks all over the world on this topic. And I know so many people are interested in this. I find this at every conference that I attend when I speak at all on the topic of millennials. So I thought it made sense to have him on. So welcome, Jeff. We're glad to have you.
Thanks, Shelly. It's great to be here. Right before the holiday weekend, I'm ready to party once I'm done working.
Exactly, and you know what? You're a total party animal, I know. I have to share that.
That means I'll be reading at home or something tonight.
I know. One of the things that I love most about Jeff is that he fits like I'm the biggest nerdy geek that I know, and Jeff is like right there with me on that. So that's why we get along so well.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to talk about the fact that everybody wants a piece of the millennial pie, and I know that you get this. We've talked about this a little bit before, but I mean, I have clients that are trying to figure out how to hire millennials and how to retain millennials and how to motivate millennials, and of course, marketers like you and I are constantly working with clients to figure out how it is we're going to adapt our marketing strategies to attract this consumer group that's a huge consumer group as customers. So what I want to talk about is, if you'll do just a quick overview of what this consumer base looks like. What's their age range, their maybe key traits that define them. Maybe that'll be a good start for us.
Sure. So there's not a universally agreed on definition of who is a millennial. The most broad and accepted definition would be born between 77 and 2000, spending power between 1.3 and 1.7 trillion dollars. 10,000 women today over the age of 25 who are millennials are going to have babies. So they're not all young, still in high school and
right.
Figuring things out. But I would say I prefer to think about millennials as a mindset, not just an age range, because I think there are a lot of people in their 40s and 50s who have the mindset, but there are also people in their 20s who don't. And when I talk about the mindset, I really talk about the intersection of normal evolution and consumer culture with rapid change in digital, social, and mobile culture, which is usually first adopted by millennials. Millennials are 2.5 times more likely to be early adopters of digital, social, and mobile cultural tools.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you know that's a terrific point because you know, of course, I hang out on the internet a lot, and as do many of my friends. And you know, we talk a lot about that. I'm 54, and I am so wired like a millennial. So, and I know that you are as well. So, I think that's really important when you're thinking about marketing strategies. Is that it's not just young people, and I think marketers forget that a lot as well. So, let's talk about a little bit. I know we could talk about this for hours. And so I tried to narrow down just a few things that I wanted to hit on. What do you think, let's talk about the 3 things that you think matter the most to people with the millennial mindset about products they want to buy and use. You know, what are they looking for?
Well, in addition to functional and emotional benefits, they really love to have participative benefits, which means the fundamental definition of brand value has evolved in a significant way. And what that translates to is, you know, they still expect great products at a great price, but they want the company to stand for more than their bottom line. They want a more authentic, transparent relationship. It's different for B2B than B2C brands, but at the core, millennials love brands that are more share-worthy, which means they often have a disruptive schema that aligns to values, and they're more authentic and they're more genuine, and ultimately they make life easier and simpler. So, people think millennials are all disloyal and unwilling to pay a small premium for things, and it's just not true. Just go stand in front of a Chipotle and look at the line at lunchtime, and they're all paying full price for the burrito.
Right, right. I have a great example of that I haven't yet written about, but I'm going to. I was lured by a Facebook ad to buy underwear from a company called Me Undies, and they make men's and women. They make boxer shorts for men and briefs, of course, for men too. But their underwear is not cheap. And they bill themselves as the most comfortable underwear on the planet. So when I saw that, it's like, well, who doesn't want that, right? So I follow a Facebook ad, I check them out, and every step of the way, how they attracted me as a consumer was such an interesting case study, which is why I'm writing about it, but I haven't finished yet. But one of the things
But it is good to know that you wear undies.
I do.
Yeah.
Not no commando here for me.
Yeah.
But what is really interesting in terms of participation is one of the things that they do that we see more and more often is that they say that if you share this link that's a unique URL for you with your friends, if anybody buys as a result of that, we'll give you $20. You know what? $20 is a lot of money. That wasn't why I bought, but you know what? In no time, 4 of my friends had purchased from them. Didn't matter the size of the order, but I sent them 4 customers, and they put $80 in my account. So that what did I do? I went back and bought more underwear, and I told everybody I knew about it. So I think that's also from a marketing standpoint how you can build campaigns that attract the millennial mindset people.
Right.
Give them a reason to motivate them to share what it is you're doing.
Right, and I don't know anything about Me Undies, but I know that you've hit on a couple of really important points. One of which is the more unique a brand is, the more pricing authority that brand has. And so, Me Undies is unique from what you've described, and therefore able to probably command a modest premium to others in the category. It's also got, from what you're describing to me, a disruptive model that's unique. And share-worthy. And so, when you engineer that from the beginning, as opposed to just overlaying that as a communication strategy, you're going to end up a lot further down the road.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this brand is just paying so much attention to them. Their ads on Facebook feature people wearing underwear, not tremendously sexy or racy or anything like that, but I saw a couple weeks ago that their ads were banned. So what they did is they drew stick figure ads, and that was their ad. So Facebook banned us, but here we are. And again, it was just kind of, and that's attractive to a customer. And of course then that was shared tons of times and all that. So I thought they're a really good example. We're kind of talking about this a little bit, but I've seen you speak on this topic before, and you've given some great examples. Talk to us more about the kind of messaging that works with millennials. Give us some examples of what you're seeing.
Well, I think that messaging that resonates best is when it's a mirror image of what the brand is about, as opposed to a mirror image of what the brand wants to be, because millennials will sniff through mirror images. And so when you come up with something that's just a little bit more meaningful and a little bit more unique, you're moving past awareness and regard, and you're getting into the space that millennials are going to get real excited about. So you have this big shift, I think, from creative excellence to content excellence that's happening because millennials want to be part of co-creating all that work. And so the most interesting communications are the communications that I create, because it's all about me. And so that's why we have this whole sharing phenomenon. And so as a result, we see all kinds of new things happening in the communications realm. For some brands, that might be humor. For some brands, that might be really factual information. In some cases, the brand's responsible for creating the content. In other cases, brand fans are creating the content.
Right.
I think there's some classic examples like Warby Parker, but again, they're just playing off of what they engineered. They engineered it from the beginning. There are examples like Chipotle. And Chipotle, again, they built a model that's so simple. They stand for food with integrity. Anytime a brand can get their whole brand stand to 3 words and not include any ands, like, I think they've probably done something right. And
Right.
anytime that the average employee couldn't read the mission statement, they've probably got a problem.
Right, absolutely. You know, Chipotle is such an interesting case study for me, and I don't even know that you know this, but Chipotle was one of my clients many years ago, and when they came to me, they had 16 restaurants in Denver, and they were starting to step out into their first market outside of the Denver area, and Kansas City was the market that they went to. And this was back in the day, this wasn't before the internet, but it was before social networks and all that kind of thing, and even back in those early days, so this was, 2000s. Even back in those early days, Chipotle still stood for one thing, and it was really great food. And what they didn't believe in was spending a lot of money on traditional advertising. What they believed in was that if we put this incredible burrito in your hand, you would become a customer. And so their brand has evolved a little bit, but they still, even all those years ago, when they were relying on word of mouth marketing as opposed to online marketing, just kind of an interesting, build it from the beginning. I think that's a really great message.
Yeah, and they still, as a brand, compared to other large brands, spend a tiny bit of money in marketing relative to what you would see from, the mega brands.
Right, and that was really, it's funny, and I've worked with customers since then that I use this as an example for. Chipotle was my client for 4 years, and what we did in Kansas City was we created a blueprint by which they launched and opened restaurants throughout the United States. And what they believed in word of mouth marketing, they believed in their product, and they believed that as long as we could find a way to get their product in your hands, you would become a customer. Because, who doesn't? I still eat at Chipotle as much as I ever did. But what was interesting was 4 years after they opened their first store in Kansas City, we gave away as much food as we did in year one. And that was what they spent their money on, as opposed to buying TV or buying print ads, because they knew what would be effective. It would really be just delivering on what they said they would deliver, which was a great burrito. So I love their story. I think, too, you have some great examples that I've heard you talk about before in terms of the sharing economy. So maybe touch on that just a little bit. Why things like brands like Uber or Zipcar or those kind of things resonate so much.
Right. So the model we like to talk about for sort of engineering the most millennial-centric kind of ideas, and again, millennials aren't a target audience. They're your consumer partner. So language becomes a big issue. You've got to think of them as that partner, is what we call high participation, high share-worthy kind of brands. So if participation is the x-axis and share-worthy is the y, participation means you can co-create the product or service, or participate in the development, co-create the customer journey, which often is at its peak for people either before or after they make the purchase. Not all purchases are the peak moment of excitement. Sometimes the peak moment of excitement is before I make it or after, and then finally co-create the marketing. So co-create the service or product, co-create the journey, and co-create the marketing, and then this whole share-worthy notion, which we've talked about a little bit around authenticity, disruptive schemas that align to your brand authority. Ultimately, it's the Seinfeld episode, Shelly. It's when George says, Shelly, it's not you, it's me, I'm going to break up with you. Well, sharing is it's not you, it's me, it's how I feel, and these brands that are really getting it understand that we're going to create opportunities for you to share, and it's not about our brand. We're going to create opportunities because we know you're excited to share. What I think is interesting is, and perhaps one of the biggest challenges is, if you're successful, you tend to stay with the same thing again and again and again and again. And in doing so, what happens oftentimes is you allow consumers who were in love with your brand to fall into boredom.
Yeah, to get bored, absolutely.
When people get bored, we already know in love what happens.
Right.
They get divorced.
Right.
But if you're a consumer, you don't have to send papers to walk across the street to another retailer or another restaurant. You just go. So the big challenge that I think many brand strategy professionals face when they're in mature industries is, how do I prevent boredom? How do I decide to make changes before it's too late, even when things are going great, which is really tough, because when things are going great, you don't want to change anything.
Yep. And I think that's really easy. Think about your own behavior all the time and how fickle we are. And you know what the reality of it is? For instance, when it comes to a car service like Uber, that's great. You know what? I don't care if it's Uber or if it's Lyft or if it's Halo, which I use when I'm in Chicago. What they do is they solve a problem for me. I don't want to have to go out on the street in any kind of weather and hail a cab. I just want somebody to pick me up. You know what I'm saying? So I think that figuring out, that's really, really important. And then it makes marketers, you know, I know you find this all the time, and I find this as well when I'm traveling around speaking. Marketers' heads are just spinning. I mean, it's like, holy crap, there's so much. You know, you work for a pretty big agency. You've got a lot of hands, not a lot of hands in the millennial piece. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, I think for marketers in general, no matter the size of your company, it's a lot. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot to adapt to. It's a lot to get your head around. But to me, that's not going anywhere. You know, that's not changing. It's going to get worse, don't you think, before it gets better?
Well, I think the challenge is the more success you had in your past, the harder it is for most people to make changes to address this consumer as partner, because you're not used to thinking of them as a partner. You're thinking of them as a target audience. You're not used to new models and new tools and new ways of thinking. And you've had all this success, and so you want to keep trying these same things. And so I think the companies that are going to have the biggest challenge in many cases are going to be the companies that have had the most success in the past. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And I think too, a thing that I find a lot in both the B2B and the B2C space is that people are really freaked out about handing control of any kind to a customer. And you know, I think that you have to figure out a way to realize, and you have to figure out a way to communicate to senior leaders that this is inevitable. Like it's not like you handing it over. The control is already there. You know, people are already sharing about your product. They're talking about your product. You're out there whether you know it or not. And for many, trusting in, you know, a campaign that invites people to take pictures of themselves in your product and you know, post those on Instagram and Pinterest and all that kind of thing. I mean, that's scary as hell for a lot of marketers. But I think that in order to keep people interested in, especially this target audience, in this consumer group rather, in what you're doing, I think you have to hand over that control. Don't you think so?
Yeah, I mean, and handing over control doesn't have to be scary, because it can be done in a way where you're crowdsourcing information where you might already have a point of view, and so you're gaining insights that allow you to refine what you're doing. And the handing over control doesn't have to be, I mean, the best companies hand over control really early and really often. But if you want to put your toe in the water, you can start with, you know, handing over control and reimagining your customer journey. Yeah. And you can take people through your journey and get input on that journey, which might not even affect the core operations, because the journey often starts, as you were saying, online before you go purchase something.
You know, maybe Jeff, it's a little bit like when you're a lawyer. You know, you never ask a question that you don't know the answer to already. You know, and think about this though. Think about it. Think about some of the things that we've seen. There have been a couple times lately online where we've seen campaigns backfire. The police department that asked people to share, and I can't even remember what police department it was.
New York.
New York. Okay, you know, I mean, that was. So what they were doing, I think that maybe they had a good idea, but my point is that with the crowdsourcing, we need to do more crowdsourcing and asking, what do you think about this? How could we do this better before we do those kind of things? Because that kind of feedback could maybe prevent some of those backfires.
Right, and I think it's a matter of degree. So we're doing a launch for a new client right now called blacktie.com. And we went to online crowdsourcing to refine our customer experience, and we got some great input. It wasn't that we didn't have some ideas on what we wanted to do before we went in, but we were really open to the possibilities. And by going online, it was like, okay, well, this product is going to be delivered via an online channel, so what an awesome way to do it. So a lot of it is just thinking through, and listening is always, you know, a trick. And listening really for intent is hard.
I think that it's also really hard for marketers. I think it's hard for marketers. I think whether you're on the brand side or the agency side, I think that agencies in particular like to think that, you know, we bring the big ideas and sometimes that little part, that listening in advance, that doing your homework, I think is what makes the difference between a really kick-ass campaign and one that people are sharing going, did they think about who their audience was? I mean, I see those kind of things all the time, so it's
Right.
interesting. Okay, so are there, we kind of talked about this a little bit, what brands are really getting it right when it comes to marketing to millennials. Do you have anything that we haven't covered that you want to throw out?
I do. So if we looked at the top 4,000 brands that we're studying in our research when it comes to millennials, and obviously we're looking at bigger brands when we're doing research,
Sure.
We see brands like Google, Amazon, Tesla, even brands like Jell-O, kind of an iconic mature brand that are doing really well with millennials. And so you have to peel the onion back a little bit and say what's going on here. And at the core, the more unique the brand is and the more meaningful the brand is, the better the performance. And when I say performance, I'm not just talking about marketing performance. If you look at stock performance over 4 or 5 year periods of time of the companies that perform really, really well with millennials, you will find that they have really unique and really meaningful functional, emotional, and participative benefits, and it spans categories. So it's not like, well, that only holds true in this category. Really, honestly, it holds true. It doesn't matter what category you're in. Uniqueness and meaningfulness are really driving Tomorrowland brands to higher levels. So no longer is it enough to, I have to create brand awareness and brand preference. That's sort of yesterday thinking.
Right.
Yeah, you need that. It's jacks are better to open in a poker game, but it's not the winning hand in this game. And
Right.
so that's why I say the more success you've had in the past, the harder it gets, because you're going to have to unlearn a lot of these things. Like,
Right.
We all grew up with lifetime value and target audience and creating brand awareness and all these kinds of things. And it's like, those are all true, but they're really not going to get you where you need to be. And that makes it interesting and challenging, and it creates great opportunities. For me, what's exciting is since we only focus on these trends, we get to see a lot of really interesting things across different brands, literally every day in different cities. And so it's like, okay, we're in a petri dish here, and we're seeing people try things all the time. And some of it doesn't work, and that's okay, because most of the great brands that are doing really well are trying things that aren't working.
Right, and that's good.
Yeah, because they're finding things that are.
Failing fast.
Right,
Yeah.
They pivot. They're really these great brands. They try a lot of things and they pivot and they keep going. So I feel really comfortable that there's a process that's repeatable. But who's going to be the next big winner? I don't know. It depends who makes the most disruptive changes within their brand authority.
Right. Well, and what I think is so fascinating about that is that as not only a brand strategist, but somebody like you who does a lot of business development work, I have to sell the fact that this stuff works. What we're proposing is going to work. I have to be able to sell that. And so when you can talk about an impact over time in stock price and that kind of thing, those are the kind of things that get the attention of the people that hire you and the people that hire me. And that makes an exciting time to do what it is we do. I like that a lot. I'm a huge fan of killing them with data.
There are a couple people who've done some interesting work. Jim Stengel, former CMO at Procter & Gamble, wrote a book called Grow, and there are a couple other people who've done more recent work. And I think there's very high correlations on the things we're talking about. So it's like, we come out and we talk to people about these trends, and they want to know if they're going to work. It's like, well, let's go look at the data on the public companies and their financial performance, and let's see if it correlates to the things we're talking about.
Right.
And he's not the only one doing interesting work in this space. It's several people have. And they've come to the same conclusions, I think, which is if you're creating meaning and uniqueness, you're going to get way further down the road, both with your consumers, your partner, and your shareholders. Right.
That's awesome. To me, that's everything about what makes it such an exciting time to be a marketer. But I also love change. I love pivoting. And I think that marketers in general, brand side or agency side, that's really where we need to be, because this is what this business is about today and moving forward, don't you think?
I think it's about adopting and adapting as fast as you can to meet needs. Yep.
Absolutely. So Is there anything, I think there's probably some givens as we kind of wrap up our conversation here. Is there anything in particular that you want to caution people about watching out for when it comes to working with a millennial audience, millennial mindset?
Well, millennials are a fairly large cohort, and they're not homogenous. So
Right.
for most brands, we use a big data tool, and we will reverse append data to customer files to use predictive analytics to help understand the segments for that brand. And not a segmentation of millennials, but a segmentation for the category and their customer set. And the important thing is if you can focus in on, a couple of segments instead of the whole cohort, you'll end up a lot further down the road. If you're trying to sell beef, maybe you should sell beef to people who are interested in beef or chicken and pork, not vegans. And we have data to know who eats everything, right? And so if you're willing to spend a little bit of time and money, what I say is big data doesn't interest me, useful data is. Wildly interesting to me, and the tool sets are there that if you bring in the right people to do really heavy predictive analytics work, you can play Moneyball and know what's likely to occur and what kind of outcomes and probabilities are likely to occur, and model the strategies that you're creating, and then see if it works. And if the model holds, then you've got something that's wonderful when you move forward.
And there's every reason to spend that money at the beginning. I mean, the way that I look at it, and I deal with people all the time that are, dealing with budget issues and all that sort of thing, but the potential is so great if you'll do the work up front, if you'll focus in on that useful data, if you'll use that to build everything that you're going to build. It's such a huge potential win. Not to mention cost savings, because you could potentially go down the road, go completely wrong direction, and have to start over.
Right. So the simple analogy is a lot of times people want to dive into the pool without having sort of spent the time to do the analytics. And what happens later on is they get to knock down the wall to redo their kitchen. And it's like, if we'd done that the first time, we would never knock down that wall. And so it's much easier to dive in the pool and a little bit harder to say we'll spend a little money on the analytics, and it takes a little extra time. But in today's world, it's not that expensive, and it doesn't take a lot of time if you use new technologies and techniques. Even if you have dirty data, if you reverse append clean data to that dirty data, you can still get way down the road around who you should be talking to and who you shouldn't be talking to. Because talking to everyone is probably a recipe for failure.
It's really dumb. And so you can look at it, it's either spend it now, spend some now, or spend a whole bunch later.
Right.
And spend some now and exponentially increase your chances of actually being successcul. I think that
the nice thing for most of the more sophisticated brands, they understand, you're actually spending money that I'm not going to make any money on your big data append. I have to just go buy that data, right? So it's like, let me help you, and I'm actually telling you, if you spend a little more money with other folks, you're going to end up, getting something that I'll be able to use and you'll be able to use to do more for you. It's the old Jerry Maguire, help me help you.
Right. Exactly. Well, Jeff, you've been awesome, and I want to tell everybody that's listening, here's Jeff's book, Marketing to Millennials. You can find it very easily. You can find Jeff Fromm on Twitter at Jeff Fromm. You can find Jeff on, what is it, Marketing to Millennials. What's the URL of your website, Jeff? Tell us.
The blog is millennialmarketing.com. There's a lot of free research on the research tab, and then our conference, sharelikeby.com, is about 4 weeks away in New York, and if you can't make it to New York, hopefully you'll come to Minneapolis in the fall.
That'd be great. Well, thanks so much, Jeff, for making time to be with us today. You're awesome. We're going to have lunch soon.
Thanks, Shelly.
Bye, everybody.
Shelly, can you hear me?